Again, so you might be thinking this setting looks familiar. Gabriel must have gone back up there to record another episode uptown because it was so pretty. Well, you're kind of right. You see, I had other stuff to talk about, so I actually recorded this back right after I finished that last video. So yeah, for me that was like a minute ago. The conversation hasn't stopped for me, but I want to get a little bit ahead on these recordings. Which, trade secret, that's how all vlogs are done, is you record when you have time and then you release them on a schedule. Anyway, probably this will be dated anyway because I don't expect this weather to last for 5 minutes, let alone until such time as this video is released. But I'm walking through the back alleys again because I like back alleys. And I'm talking this time about a question that a friend recently had for me that I answered to the best of my abilities. I don't know if I answered it thoroughly or not, but you guys can let me know in the comments below how well I do here. She had a question about Mariology. The reasons why she did are largely immaterial to this discussion because lots of people do, and all for their own reasons. It doesn't particularly matter why people ask Catholics about Mary, but it is sort of a strange and interesting thing from my point of view. And what I've heard from former Protestants or other brands of non-Catholic who have since become Catholics is that the perspective on Mary from the outside is a very different and very strange thing. They said, like, from the outside, Mary seems to be like this huge and towering part of what the Catholic faith is about. But once you're inside it, she kind of shrinks back to her normal size. I really like this buttresses here. This is one of the first things that drew me into the alleys in Butte, is looking at this architecture here. And then there's this interesting view going up here. This is really interesting in the winter because you got these gnarly icicles. But anyway, back to the subject of Mary. Non-Catholics have a lot of issue because she seems to be this huge and towering thing. She doesn't from the inside, and I've never been out. I'm a lifelong Catholic, so it's kind of hard for me to relate to that. So, how's it going? So let me try to explain this as best I can from that perspective of always being inside and not understanding what the objections are that exist on the outside. Okay, Mary is important because she is the mother of Jesus. Jesus is the single most important thing ever. Now, from my point of view, I should be able to say, the end, we'll see you next week. Because to me, that answers all of it. But there are all these questions that non-Catholics have that I just don't, it's not that I don't have the answers, it's that I don't understand the questions. Let me try to break down these questions as best I can. Okay? First of all, there's the standard question that all the apologists are sick of hearing. The standard question is, why do Catholics worship Mary? The standard answer is, Catholics do not worship Mary, we honor her. Okay, now there are some linguistic issues here because we mean different things by different words. That's the whole point of this series, right? Okay, so we got the word worship. I'm also going to introduce the word adore and the word honor. We're going to treat these words, okay? See what Catholics mean by them, what Protestants mean by them. Now, the meanings of these have changed over the years in all camps concerned, beyond Christian circles and just in the realm of pure linguistics. Honor, worship, and adore have changed meaning over the years. Get over it. I'm also going to introduce a couple of Greek words here. Doulia and latria. Okay? These will become important to the conversation. I'm also going to have to mention the word hyperdoulia, which is a weird sort of a word, but we will get to that. Okay? Now, honor pretty much means you think something is cool and you think something is worthy of respect, right? Okay, worship was that worship meant worthy of great or official respect, as in addressing a judge or a policeman or something as your worship. You will see this use in old literature. You'll even see this use in like old cartoons and stuff. Somebody will address somebody as your worship. Today, we would say your honor. And in fact, in court, we do say your honor when addressing a judge. It means the exact same thing as your worship used to. So there is one sense, one limited sense, this one sense in which, yes, Catholics, quote, worship, close quote, Mary. That is to say, we find her worthy of serious and codified honor. Okay, now today, the word worship doesn't mean that anymore. Why? I don't know. English is wibbly wobbly. I don't know what's going on. All I know is that today, what we used to call worship, we now call honor. What we used to call adoration, we now call worship. Different term. To adore means to acknowledge as being God and worthy of all honor, worthy of infinite honor, okay? Mary is not that and never has been. God is that and always has been, okay? Do we worship Mary? Well, if this is the 17th century, then yes, absolutely we do. If this is the 21st century, then no, absolutely we do not, because we do not adore Mary. Okay, so on to the question, why is Mary important? Well, because she was God's mom. How often does that happen? And before anybody takes offense to the term Mother of God, let me explain where that came from. The church, very early on, adopted the term Mother of God because they wanted to combat two early heresies. One was Gnosticism and the other one Arianism, and they are both very complicated and beyond the scope of this blog, and you should study them. But in a nutshell, one of the things that Arius proclaimed in Arianism was that Jesus was God and therefore not a man. Implications of which being, of course, that God, being immortal, does not die. So Jesus did not actually die on the cross for our sins. Church didn't like that so much, proclaimed him a heretic. Then on the other half of the argument, you have the Gnostics who proclaimed, among many, many, many other things irrelevant to this discussion, that God, or that Jesus Christ was a man, and therefore obviously not God. Okay? He was a man, he was the perfection of man. He became God-like. He was such a perfect human being that he became united to God in a special way, and so he was special among all mere mortals in this respect. The church likewise denounced this as a heresy. The term Mother of God was employed as a crafty little way of acknowledging both. Jesus was God, and Mary was, literally, his mother. Okay, she is the mother of God. That is to say, Jesus is perfectly divine and perfectly human at the same time, making possible this station of having a mother of God. Okay, which would not be possible from Arius's point of view, because Mary would just be this kind of surrogate proxy charade. I don't know where they think he literally originally came from. How's it going? But she would not literally be his mother in any true sense. And then from the Gnostic viewpoint, she is not the mother of God, she's just the mother of this guy who became very godly. In order to say mother of God, you have to be Catholic. That is to say, you have to believe that Jesus was both God and man at the same time, despite the fact that we cannot understand this. That is canonical as well. It is a doctrine of the faith that we cannot understand certain things. The incarnation being one, the Trinity being a huge one, and of course the transubstantiation as well, all of which are beyond the scope of this conversation. If anybody asks about those, we can talk about them. But we believe that there are certain things that are just beyond mortal ken, which frankly makes perfect sense to me. I'm actually curious how long this video can go. I imagine I'm going to run out of time eventually, but I'll keep talking until then, so this is probably going to end abruptly. Okay, so back to Mary. Why is she important? Because she is the mother of God. Because we revere Jesus. That's really the long and short of it. We revere Jesus, and therefore Mary is very important to us. Now, what was posed to me was that Mary isn't really important beyond the scope of just being his mom, and being a mom doesn't imply anything but giving birth. Now, I want everyone to think very hard about that, because that is the crux of the Protestant accusations about Catholics being idolaters and worshiping Mary as a god. You have to get your mind around this concept, okay? Being a mother, from their point of view, implies nothing but giving birth. That's all it is. Your mother is nothing more than the meat sack that squoze you out of her vagina, and then her role in your life was done. Okay? Now, if that sounds reasonable to you, I don't really know how to continue. If that sounds like malarkey, then I'm with you. Your mother is very important to you if you're any sort of normal person. Now, I don't mean any offense to like orphans or whatnot, but your mother, in almost all human interaction, is very important to you, good or bad. She is very important. Her influence on your life cannot be denied. And this is true of adopted people as well, okay? If you're adopted, you're not off the hook in this argument because you have somebody who served the role of mother. Even if you were adopted, say, by one man who wasn't married. I don't know how common that is, but he's still going to take on a lot of these roles that I'm talking about, motherhood occupying. Okay, so your mother is a part of your life, well past birth and into infancy, well past infancy and into childhood, well past childhood even into adolescence and adulthood. She is a guiding force. She is an influence. She is a role model. She is something that makes you who you are, okay? Most of my friends, I know their mothers. All of the people that I used to have any kind of romantic interest in, I had at least some passing contact with their mothers. Even some of my business associates, I have had contact with their mothers. And many of these friends' mothers, I have had no contact with beyond the fact that they were my friend's mom. And that makes them very, very important in my life, to know that this is the person that my friend became who he or she is because of. This is one of the greatest influences in my friend's life, business associate's life, or whoever's life. This is a very important component of that. And the closer that person is, the closer their families become. I am far more interested in my best friend's mother, shout out Mary Alice, than I am in some random co-worker's mother. I have some interest in both, but the closer that person gets to me, the more important that person is to me, the more important that person's mother becomes. So, therefore, it follows that as people get closer to me, their mothers become more important. This means that Mary is pretty close to the most important thing in my life, because nothing in this universe is closer, more important, or more central to me than Jesus Christ.